We are The Meltdown, and we are here with yet another retro trailer reaction. This series looking to reintroduce and put the spotlight on some notable movies from previous years. All of the choices featured within this series have been hand-selected by our Meltdown crew. Some of these selections include some of us completing first-time watches, and some include those timeless classics that we may have all seen numerous times. Today is our Season 1 finale. We will look to launch Season 2 with our in-studio panel in the coming months. Today's entry has us remembering a masked Hugo Weaving with 2006's V for Vendetta, also starring Natalie Portman, Stephen Fry, Stephen Ray, and John Hurt, and it's directed by James McTeague. Ebert and Roper gave the film 2 thumbs up. Roger Ebert stated that V for Vendetta almost always has something going on that is actually interesting, inviting us to decode the character and plot and apply the message where we will. The film's story was adapted from the graphic novel V for Vendetta, which was originally published between 1982 and 1985 in the British comic anthology Warrior, later being reprinted and completed by DC. Co-creator Alan Moore, who was very dissatisfied with the film adaptations of his other adapted works, From Hell in 2001 and The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen in 2003, reportedly declined to watch the film and asked to not be credited or paid any sort of royalties. Co-creator and illustrator David Lloyd supported the film adaptation, commenting that the script was very good and that Moore would only ever be truly happy with a complete book-to-screen adaptation. Hugo Weaving said, quote, "Alan Moore was writing about something which happened some time ago. This is a response to the world in which we live today. So I think that the film and the graphic novel are 2 separate entities." The film was notably made by some of the same filmmakers involved in the Matrix series, with the screenplay done by the Wachowskis. So with that, let me introduce our panel. I am Meltdown host Tim Melton. That is my co-host, Mr. John Lunsford.
I didn't think of something witty to say this time.
That actually is witty in itself. Our producer is Tyler Johns.
I also didn't think of something witty to say, so violin, vox populi, other V words.
V words, yeah.
I was going to say, those are actually, that second one especially is a V word worth going with there. And we want to dedicate this episode of Retro Trailer Reaction to Rockstar, who has been with us from the start. This film was my selection, so why did I pick 2006's V for Vendetta? In my opinion, this film is an incredible balancing act of entertainment and enlightenment. The film is able to be so endearing without losing its sense of danger. It never pulls its punches. The story itself has themes that are deep, but the film adaptation, in my opinion, doesn't make the mistake of watering them down and chooses the route of substance over spectacle, but it's got a great blend of both stylish action and stinging commentary. I saw this as a teenager in 2006 in the theater, knowing nothing about the source material whatsoever, and I was thoroughly impressed by just how deep and electrifying this film was, and I think it somehow gets better each and every time I watch it. It ages like a fine wine. The performances from the ensemble are all tonally perfect, and it all creates for a powerful punch of gunpowder and political precautions. I am excited to talk about it with this panel all these years later. So without any further hesitation, John, let's now go ahead and see the retro trailer for V for Vendetta.
I wish I wasn't afraid all the time, but I am.
People should not be afraid of their governments. Governments should be afraid of their people.
Those caught in violation of curfew will be prosecuted without leniency or exception.
It's past curfew, you know.
Mercy. Oh, not tonight.
Who are you?
Gentlemen, I want this terrorist found, and I want him to understand what terror really means.
We're working on several leads.
Her parents were detained when she was 12.
It was like those black bags erased them from the face of the earth.
You have one chance. You must tell us the whereabouts of Codename V.
If our own government was responsible for the deaths of 100,000 people, would you really want to know?
Those who are responsible will be held accountable.
The time has come for you to live without fear.
I'm ready.
This country stands on the edge of oblivion. I want everyone to remember why they need us.
Kill him.
My turn.
I suddenly had this feeling that everything was connected. We're all part of it. Are we ready for it?
The only verdict is vengeance.
John, I think that's actually one of the better trailers we've had in this series. I love that trailer.
I do too. I actually haven't watched it because I didn't want to watch it before we actually did it. I downloaded it, put it in there. It's like, actually, this isn't too bad. I feel like it's kind of in the end of the late 90s, early 2000s where you still kind of had the voice guy a little bit. Some of the trailers were really goofy.
Yeah.
Because the movie, I feel like, kind of gets into the newer age of some CGI and stuff like that, and the trailer kind of follows suit. It's like, okay, we're starting to get some good trailers about the time this movie comes out.
Trailers hadn't become completely modernized by the time this one came out. So you're right, it is sort of that perfect sort of blend of old and new. As we saw in parts of the trailer, following World War, London is a police state occupied by a fascist government, and a vigilante known only as V uses terrorist tactics to fight the oppressors of the world in which he now lives. When V saves a young woman named Evie from the secret police, he discovers an ally in his fight against England's oppressors. So, John, what is your take on V for Vendetta?
I will say the only thing I didn't like about the trailer is they talk about her parents, being political people, which is why they black bagged them, and it showed Stephen Fry and then it showed her mom, because those are actually the only two people we see get beat and black bagged in front of her, and it kind of made it seem like Stephen Fry was her dad, which is not necessarily the case, but outside of that, it was a good trailer.
I'm fine with the trailer misdirect, by the way. I just want to point
No, yeah, it's not after the fact. It's like,
Yeah.
that's not exactly how it happens, but I very much like this movie. I, for the most part, have liked everything the Wachowskis have had their hands on, with the exception of Speed Racer, because you had The Matrix, you had everything that went with The Matrix and the whole trilogy. Then you had V for Vendetta, and it's like, cool, they've done, I know they didn't direct it, but they did, the writing, producing, and all that of this. That's like, it's still a Wachowski's project that's good, and then you get Speed Racer. So it kind of fell off a cliff after that. But this is a very well done movie. It still holds up 20 years later. Like I mentioned, the CGI, I feel like it's to a point where the knives flying through the air doesn't look like that. Kind of looks cheesy. That kind of looks stupid. It still plays. The final fight at the end, I feel like the blood splatter is like a little much. Like I feel like it doesn't quite play into the way that would be. And then it's like an entire bag of blood shoots out of like their shoulder or something. But
It's stylized.
I get it's stylized. I get it's for effect. It kind of has like I feel like a 300 style, kind of how they did the blood and stuff, and that kind of the Zack Snyder way of doing things. But I kind of feel like this, like Zack Snyder is kind of a new age version of the Wachowskis. I feel like there's some similarities between kind of how they produce things. Not necessarily like the movies are the same, but there are some similarities in the production. But Hugo Weaving was on an absolute tear at this point with Lord of the Rings and The Matrix, and then coming into here, and once again, I know the Wachowskis part of that, but coming off Lord of the Rings, which I'd still say is the most epic trilogy of all time. Natalie Portman coming off Star Wars, so she was coming off something that, obviously has had different levels of enthusiasm from when Phantom Menace came out until now. It's gone up and down. But so two really good casting. I like Stephen Fry in this. He's somebody I didn't really know until this movie, just not following British culture. That's not somebody I necessarily followed. I thought he was really good in this. I thought Stephen Ray was really good in this. I thought that was probably one of my favorite aspects of this, because I like, this is not post-apocalyptic, but it's kind of that 1984 new way.
Dystopian.
Yeah, dystopian.
This has got a good accompaniment with Children of Men, which we've already done on the Retro Trailer Reaction.
Where basically England did it right and everybody else screwed it up. And, who knows what will eventually happen one day. But it's funny how many, England did it right and America sucks kind of movies we get.
You could watch this year's Civil War if you want more of that flavor.
So there was a lot right going into this. I like those kind of movies. I've always been fascinated by 1984, just the overall story of 1984, which this and Children of Men both very much follow. But to mention Stephen Ray, the storyline of kind of him realizing, hey, what we're doing is not right, but I need to fall in line. I need to do what I can. I need to play this the right way, trying to investigate things the right way. The rest of the panel there just kind of going along with the guy that works at the BBC knockoff, basically, and Creedy that gets killed at the end, and then John Hurt. I love also that John Hurt also comes out and plays the fake versions of himself on Stephen Fry's show. So I thought he played kind of the goofy version of it, and also like the really hardcore dictator part of it really well. But then I like how the story played out from and the other thing I liked too was the doctor that he has to kill that worked at Larkill. Like her once again understanding the right and wrong, what she's doing wasn't necessarily wrong. They were trying to she was trying to legitimately save lives. Were there ulterior motives behind it? Yes. Did things end up coming from it in an awful way? Yes. But there's so much good and evil balance in this between all of the characters, and even characters that seem as bad, they're actually not that bad, and they have still good intentions.
Everybody's layered in this movie.
Yeah, and it goes from Natalie Portman and Hugo Weaving up to the bad people. It's everybody is really well written in this. The story is really well written, and there's cool explosions in it too every now and then also.
Absolutely. Tyler, you love V for Vendetta, is that correct?
That is correct. If I were to rank my top 50 movies of all time, this is easily in there. It could easily make top 25 even. This is...
So you're saying it's ranked ahead of Not Another Church Movie?
Oh, for sure. For sure. This has been one of my favorite movies since I was probably 13, 14, started getting into a lot of George Orwell's writing, whether it's 1984 or Animal Farm, and that's why I love the dialogue in this movie. You've got V just delivering these absolute bangers of quotes.
Absolutely.
From people shouldn't be afraid of their governments, government should be afraid of their people, to his monologue. It's fantastic. I can't really think of a movie off the top of my head where I love the dialogue more than I do in this movie. Also, I thought it was interesting how the original graphic novel was changed for the movie. In the graphic novel, it's more of a commentary on Margaret Thatcher's England, but there's some tweaks in this movie to where it can be more applicable to a post 9/11 America, and I think that only makes the movie even better. Hugo Weaving did a great job. Same with Natalie Portman, Stephen Fry, Stephen Ray. Last thing, one of my favorite shots in any movie is the domino scene towards the end of this. This just the wow, my
that's while the mic clip just dominated.
Yeah, my mic clip just shot off like a rocket.
It did look like the domino. It's perfect.
The domino scene, everything explodes in there. Yeah.
Yes, I love the reveal of the dominoes falling to reveal the giant V.
I just wonder how long it took him to actually build that.
A long time.
I mean, he did have a year between 5th of November to build that, I guess.
Yeah, some poor production assistant got tasked with that one.
Oh, and the shot of the crowd walking with everyone wearing the V mask, the
absolutely.
Guy Fawkes mask, rather.
And that,
amazing.
Along with that part too, at the end when they all start pulling their mask off and it's all the people that have died throughout the movie. I
that's
really
good.
Yes.
It's so good. Okay, speaking of masks, I love this movie for a lot of reasons. I'm going to get into a couple of them. As a Halloween fan, I understand the importance of a mask working on screen, and this could have looked laughable the entire time. And it isn't. It works perfectly, and I know it's from the graphic novel, but there was a chance that this was not going to work on screen with the way that it was presented, and I think that they did a wonderful job of finding that right blend. The score is excellent, feeling both classical at times where it pulls classical music and modern at the same time as well. The Guy Fawkes exposition scene to start, I think is completely necessary and effective, and it gets you right into sort of where we're headed with this story. The shot of V putting on the mask for the very first time, where it's going through his vision and the mask comes on and you get the mirror shot.
Yeah.
so fantastic. Like, that holds up so well. Like, I see modern shots that aren't nearly as good as that one is.
Oh, yeah.
The saving Natalie Portman for the first time, it feels very Batman 89 to me for some reason. Like, there's obviously way more dialogue in that scene than there is in the Batman 89 sort of opening scene where we're introduced to Batman. But the bad guys also have that same sort of washed out look as the henchmen in Burton's Batman. And you immediately know you're being introduced to a highly intelligent and memorable central character. And the progression of the Evie character tracks too, because, you know, this is really, in my opinion, the closest we're ever going to get to some sort of unapologetically British Batman. The themes of censorship and surveillance have never been more topical, and with the pandemic that we all lived through, the film really feels so incredibly authentic with it doesn't feel like it's too far off from what could happen in reality. The cooking scene where we all realize being held captive by V could have its perks, and I believe that cooking scene made Luntz's list at one point on the Meltdown about
Egg in a basket.
Movies that make you hungry. John,
I make Eggy in a basket because of this movie.
The thing is, it's not even that in particular, but it's the raving over real butter.
Yeah.
That like you can just taste butter while you're hearing that scene, because it's like, we don't eat real butter anymore because that's like too big of a delicacy that basically goes to the Chancellor, and that's it. It's just, it makes your mouth water.
The film being an early 2000s comic book movie ages extremely well. I've talked about that. John Hurt, who's making, I believe, his third appearance on Retro Trailer Reaction. He was in Alien. He was in Skeleton Key, and is now here in V for Vendetta. I mean, who knows how many more John Hurt movies we may get to in the future. Yeah. But he's perfectly cast as High Chancellor Sutler. I believe he's now right up there with Randy Quaid, John C. Reilly, and Keith David, who are all in the running for most popular Dune popcorn bucket actor. The Benny Hill BTN bit from Gordon is incredibly effective, along with the impending government raid on him. I think it's a perfect tonal mirroring, where it's like levity and you're like, whew, okay, it feels good to kind of kick the shoes off and have a good laugh. And then immediately he's getting struck across the head and carried out, which shows you just how dark and oppressive this government overreach can be. The Portman imprisonment montage is more effective than most full-length prison movies. Mm-hmm. This isn't even a prison movie, and that montage is pitch perfect. And I think this is one of the most beautiful lines in cinema. And I'm not exaggerating when I say, quote, "It is strange that my life should end in such a terrible place, but for 3 years I had roses and I apologized to nobody." And that hits me every single time as being one of the most beautiful lines in movie history.
I got goosebumps just from you saying it, Tim.
It's the truth. I mean, that is what a life well lived, summed up in one piece of dialogue, is supposed to be. And man, did it not resonate watching it again this time around. And V's badass fight sequence, it still holds up along with the final Portman monologue that sort of elicits those chill bumps. There are some things I dislike. I do think it's a tough recommendation to make for some audience types, just because they're not really wanting to maybe get into the layered approach. They want something a little bit more fun, and this movie definitely is a thinker for sure. The V mask has been oversaturated in political discourse, where every side of every argument seems to have adopted this imagery as being their own.
Blame the hacker group Anonymous for that.
There you go. I also don't fully understand why Creedy, the head of Britain's secret police force, takes down Sutler and kills him. I wish that first scene between Creedy and V had a little bit more narrative punch, because it doesn't feel earned to me that turn takes place fully. Do you guys have any problem with that?
I
no.
wish, the only thing I would wish for, I don't remember the dude's name that was basically over like the BBC clone, whatever, but he was kind of on that panel too, like when he first invades and he's the one trying to figure out what to do. I almost wish that Creedy would have been like, I'm basically the actual representative that comes out in public to represent the Chancellor, because he doesn't actually go out himself essentially until he's drug out at the end by Creedy. But like, I wish he would have been more like, I'm going and telling the news channel what to do, as opposed to there's just a guy who kind of controls the media that's on that panel. Yeah. It would have made him feel more powerful. It would have made him have more scenes if he was saying, you need to control this, you need to do this, instead of just one of his representatives is there freaking out about whatever it is. I feel like he could have had his hands over everything, and doing the same thing to Stephen Ray's character too. Like, look, I'm basically the vice chancellor here. Like, I'm basically his mouth for, who's coming up with things. I'm controlling things, because then it makes it more like, I'm not going to be his puppet anymore. Yeah. I'm going to take over. if he had been more involved in all that stuff.
Well, it's funny you describe him as the mouth, because in the graphic novel, it actually goes more in depth to the different roles that each of these characters play. In the beginning, you see the fingerman, the hand of the government, Louis Prothero, the BBC clone head. He is the mouth, and so on. You've got the ears, you've got the eyes. It's just never referred to as that in the movie.
I do feel like you having gone through the graphic novel is definitely an enhancement to the overall story, because you're able to definitely piece things together and link things. And I've really been on the cusp of ordering the graphic novel because of how big of a fan I am of this material.
Do it. It's written by the same guy who made Batman: The Killing Joke.
Okay, well, I mean, come on. That's all you need. Alan Moore, right?
Yes.
As we mentioned. There are 2 scenes where you can see some of V's face where he doesn't look burnt or deformed in any way. This is a nitpick, but one of them is a clear mess up when he's fencing with a suit of armor and his whole like chin jugular area shows. And I'm just like, gosh, if I wish that scene wasn't in the movie. I mean,
he pretends like it grabs him and he's
like, I want it to be a 10 out of 10 movie, and I can't give it a 10 out of 10 with clear mess ups. And that's a clear production issue. V for Vendetta was filmed in England and in Germany. Much of the film was shot on sound stages and indoor sets, with location work being done in Berlin for 3 important scenes. It wasn't Hugo Weaving, but instead James Purefoy, who originally portrayed the character of V, but he left 6 weeks into filming. He remained uncredited, with Weaving replacing him on set and redubbing Purefoy's scenes. The voice acting in this is perfect. V for Vendetta was originally scheduled for release by Warner Brothers Pictures on November 4th of 2005, a day before the 400th Guy Fawkes night, but it was delayed, instead opening in the United States on March 17th of 2006. It received mostly positive reviews from critics and grossed $134 million against a production budget between $50 and $54 million. It was most recently released on 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray in October of 2020. So, that's what you need to know about V for Vendetta. Is this a movie you appreciate all these years later? Let us know. And John, make sure you take a look at our title sponsor, MyBookie.
Go to mybookie.ag. Promo code next round, always in the corner right there. Promo code next round for that first deposit bonus. And you can play in the sportsbook, you can play in the casino, you can play in the live casino. You can bet anything, anytime, anywhere at mybookie.ag.
That's going to do it. Make sure you like and subscribe.